Joe Thomas, NFL Network analyst, former Browns 10-time Pro Bowl offensive tackle. You can follow him on Twitter at Joe Thomas73. The 2021 Thursday Night Football schedule kicks off Week 2, Giants-Redskins, Washington football team on NFL Network. Joe, when you played, how much did you care about the schedule when it was released?
It was a big deal for me. I was a little bit heavier than I am right now, and I just wanted to make sure that we weren't opening up in September in Florida anywhere, because I knew that was going to be absolutely dreadful. And then actually one of the other things that I look for, I did not like playing on turf as my body was breaking down later in my career. Every time we had a turf game on that schedule, I was looking forward to being able to check that off and not having to do that one again. So it was all about the pain and misery that my body was going to go through. That was the first thing that my eyes went to with the schedule release.
Worst playing field you ever played on?
Honestly, the old Buffalo Bills stadium, it was not quite AstroTurf, but it was just one step above AstroTurf, and it was so hard, and it left you sore at least through the next Sunday.
Yeah, a lot of people talked about the vet in Philadelphia, but the old vet, I don't know if you got a chance to play on that, but there were a lot of players who said when you fell on that turf, it was like green colored cement.
Yeah, exactly. I never played on the vet, but Camp Randall Stadium, when I was a true freshman at Wisconsin, they had that old AstroTurf that was really brutal. And you come out of that game and you would have no skin left on your elbows and on your knees. But I did play at the Meadowlands before the New York football teams transitioned to their new home. And that was a pretty tough stadium. But even more than the field was the locker room. The locker room was like those old school high school gym lockers where you had like the mesh metal and everything. You'd put the lock over there, and then everybody was sharing those wooden benches. And then, there's maybe 20 showers, but only 5 of them work, and only 3 out of those 5 actually have hot water.
And then you look around, there's 5 guys under one shower head. That's not weird, right?
Got a little awkward in those moments, Dan.
No quick movements. What stood out last night with this schedule release?
Well, as a Browns fan, I love that first game for the Browns going to Kansas City, where their season ended last season in the playoffs. The Browns are probably going to have 9 new starters on defense. And so this is going to be their measuring stick, right? You could talk about how great the defense is going to be this season and how it's been overhauled, and they're going to be a team that can finally win a championship. Well, hey, week 1, you got a test. You're going to go and play the Kansas City Chiefs, the best offense in the NFL over the last several seasons. So that was the first one that stuck out for me.
Yeah, but also, do you want that test right out of the gate? If you're the Browns, can't go into Kansas City?
I'm not saying that if I was on the Browns, that was the game that I wanted to start with. But as a fan, that was the one that stuck out. But certainly if they come out of that game and they're able to hold that Kansas City Chiefs offense down a little bit, I mean, they really should feel great about themselves and great about the things that they were able to build through the offseason. And actually, it comes at a good point, because if you think about the Browns defense completely overhauled, they're not going to show their stuff in preseason, but the Browns defense is going to have an advantage because they kind of know what the Chiefs offense is going to look like. So really, if you do have to face the Chiefs offense, it's probably good for this Browns defense to do it in week 1, where they can have that element of surprise.
Do you think there's any questions about Baker Mayfield being the future quarterback with the Cleveland Browns?
I don't think there's questions about him being the future. There's certainly questions about how high the ceiling is. I think he showed last year he's their franchise guy. He's the guy that they can build around. But where is that ceiling? Can he become one of those top 5 quarterbacks? Or is he going to be sort of a 10 to 15 range quarterback where he's really good? You don't have to pay him at the top of the market, so you kind of build around him. Or is he going to be like Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, where he can lead a team by himself and you don't necessarily have to worry about the pieces quite as much?
Yeah, I just wonder, because I want to see another season before I'm going to give him $100 million. And it feels like that next quarterback up, it just makes more than the previous quarterback. Like, to me, it's financial insanity, because Baker Mayfield is not Patrick Mahomes, or he's not Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's not these Russell Wilson, but he's going to be paid a whole lot more than those guys. That's the part that would make me nervous, unless you think there's a sweet spot where you go, you know what, he's a $25 million a year quarterback. If we can both agree on that, both sides, then I think that can work out in the long term for both. But I don't know if, these agents go, no, you deserve $40 million. You're as good as Dak Prescott. Like, that's where things get a little tricky, Joe.
Yeah, well, it's a factor of two things. One, obviously, it's the escalating salary cap because the TV money keeps going up. But two, I think what you're seeing is that teams are slowly realizing and slowly adapting to the fact that the quarterback in today's NFL is more important to the team's success than ever before. So they should capture an ever greater portion of the salary cap. And that's why you're seeing these quarterback contracts for guys that aren't the best quarterback in the NFL. Maybe it's those, even middle of the range starters. They're still so important to the success of the team that's why they're getting those huge contracts. And coaches and GMs, they're in a bind, right? If they lose their franchise quarterback, they realize they're probably 2 years from getting fired. So they've got the gun to their head when they are in those contract negotiations with agents.
How would you feel if you were a Pro Bowl lineman with the Packers right now?
I would be very nervous because I know that our team is going to be a lot different with Aaron Rodgers under center than it is maybe Jordan Love or anybody else. And now I could maybe think, wow, taking sides here, who's right, who's wrong. But in the end, I'm thinking, hey, this team has a chance to win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. And if he walks out the door for whoever's fault, we may be in a little bit of trouble and we may struggle to become a winning team in 2021.
But would you have a say in anything as a all-pro offensive lineman, future Hall of Famer? Could you go to management and ask questions? Could you go to management and say, hey, I played against this guy in free agency. He's great. Or, hey, don't sign that guy. I didn't think he was that good. Like, are you allowed to have that?
I think when you've been around long enough and you've had enough success at your position, any smart front office.
But did you do this with Cleveland?
Decisions, I didn't go out of my way because I didn't have to, Dan. Like they were coming to me and saying, hey, what do you think about this guy? Oh. Hey, this is a pass rusher that's going to be on the market. We're looking to add a defensive end. What did you think about him? Give us your 5-minute scouting report because they value information. And I think that's what any good GM is going to do. He's not locking himself in a room and watching film. He's going out and he's asking all the people that he has in his scouting department, all the coaches, trying to gather information on all those players before they go out and ultimately he makes the decision.
Did they ever ask you your opinion on quarterbacks?
No, because I don't really have a very good sense of what makes a great quarterback other than what everybody else does. Like I can see, okay, he's a great leader. He throws a nice pass. He makes good decisions. He's got a nice snap count so I can get out of my stance on time. But as far as like the intricacies of deciding when and where to throw the football, I don't understand the coverages and the way a quarterback needs to read a defense well enough to be able to say this guy is better than, this other starter that's potentially out there.
If you were on the Jags, what would your feeling be about Tim Tebow getting a chance?
It would be a little bit lukewarm. I think from a player's standpoint, you're going to see the Tim Tebow circus coming to town. And as a player, you just kind of want to avoid some of that in general because you just want to focus on your job. You don't want to focus on the shenanigans that comes when you sign Tim Tebow. But on the other hand, you're kind of thinking maybe if I'm Trevor Lawrence, hey, this takes a little bit of pressure off me. Now they're going to be asking me about Tim Tebow rather than, hey, why'd you screw up the snap count? Why did everybody move and you weren't ready for the snap? Or, hey, why did you throw the ball into the dirt 3 times in a row in that scrimmage? So it does alleviate, I think, some of the pressure off the young guys, but maybe some of the older guys, especially those skill guys, they tend to have a little bit bigger egos. They like to have the attention on them. And when that attention is on your 4th string tight end, I can see that would maybe be a little bit of a stone in your underwear.
But it's 90-player roster. Then it gets down to 53 on game day. I mean, that's a big leap there. And I think
I'm not
people
proclaiming he's going to make the roster.
Yeah, but I think people, they're angry about this. Former players are angry that Tebow doesn't deserve this. He's polarizing. I think Urban is just doing him a favor. Come on in, and this might be your last hurrah, and then maybe you join my staff as a coach. I don't see him playing.
No, people that are angry are way off base because, first of all, NFL teams have been asking Tim Tebow since he was basically run out of the league as a quarterback to, hey, we'd love to bring you back if you want to try tight end because they realize that he's got a great work ethic and he's a guy that it could potentially be a good locker room player because he does the little things right as a professional. And let's be honest, that fourth string tight end job in the NFL, it's kind of like the position of assistant to the manager if you run a company where it's not really all that important. You're probably not going to see the field. And you know what? If your cousin's looking for a job, you can give him that job because it really, in the end, it doesn't really matter who has that position because it's not critical to the success or failure of the team or the business.
You were called for holding. You know how many times you were called for holding in your career?
I don't believe I ever was, Dan.
Oh,
actually.
okay. Well,
now that I remember,
they flagged somebody wearing number 73 17 times in your career. How many times do you think you actually held in your career?
You know, the conversation around holding is so funny because I think the general fan thinks that holding is like when you take your hands and you grab somebody's jersey. But when those NFL officials would actually come in and talk to us, they talked much more about your feet and where your feet was in relation to your defender. And if your defender was beyond you and has beaten you, and then you grab them and then hold them and then stop their ability to get to the ball carrier, that's technically what gets called for holding from a flag. So I don't remember ever being beat and having to grab and hold my player in, if that is the exact question that you're asking.
Yeah, but it's kind of like hooking somebody. Like you can make yourself look guilty, but if you do it in sort of the context of saying, hey, we're going to let you do this, the defender knows we're going to let you do this, just don't do this or you're going to get flagged. So you sort of know what the ground rules are.
Yeah, as a lineman, you know, like obviously, like I just mentioned, you know the ground rules are don't get your feet beat and then grab and restrain that player and their ability to get to the ball carrier. But I think it's interesting when I watch these guys out there, they're actually not holding in a lot of cases, but the ball runs past them. And then instead of just letting them go and acting like nothing happened, you know, the first thing they do is they throw their hands up in the air like, oh, I'm not holding anymore. And even if they weren't holding, a lot of times the ref sees them acting guilty and he throws the flag, and it just drives me nuts. You see those young tight ends do it more than anybody else because they haven't yet realized that as soon as you throw your hands in the air like, oh, I'm not guilty, that's when the flag comes.
But who was mad at you? What edge rusher?
You know what? Some of them have gotten mad at me over the years, but I think that there was a pretty healthy respect amongst most of the guys that I went against. The guys that I had the biggest beef with usually were those guys like linebackers that you didn't see all that often, but that would get really pissed off if you were peeling them off a pile or you were kind of giving them that extra shove as the ball carrier went by. Those were usually guys that I ended up beefing with. But the players like, you know, the James Harrisons and the Terrell Suggs that you're going against every single play for 65 plays, there's a healthy understanding of like what I need to do to get my job done and what you need to do to get your job done. And they get it. Like if I beat them and I pancake them and I land on top of them, they shouldn't have got beat in the first place.
Yeah, but if you go at their legs, though, that's when it's different, right?
That's dirty, right? You know, if you're trying to go at their legs, especially from the side or the back, like I totally understand them getting upset because you're going after their livelihood. Like they are picturing their children and their wife, and like if they get hurt, especially a guy that doesn't have a big guarantee contract, like it could be it for their NFL career. So they've got to be able to protect their family also. And going dirty and trying to injure a guy like that, I don't think that has any place in the game. And I'd get pissed for him.
But it doesn't, like they don't have things at the bottom of the pile anymore. Like you guys have cleaned up your act when you get into that scrum and guys are grabbing and.
There's still some of that. When you're the only time it really happens, Dan, is if there's a fumble, right? And somebody jumps on it. And when they're in that kind of like baby cradle position, it's really hard to get the ball out. And so there's a little bit of, you know, eye gouging and poking and, you know, stuff like that.
But
that
grabbing
on the bottom.
groin, though, help me understand that.
So the last time that happened, actually, it didn't happen to me, thankfully. It happened to Alex Mack. He was our center in Cleveland, and Sean Smith, I think he was playing for the Chiefs at the time, and there was some crotch grabbing going on at the bottom of a pile. And actually, it worked in the Chiefs' favor though, because Alex got right up, and I think he tried to punch Sean right in the face, got a 15-yard penalty, and so that was sort of the moral of that story. Like, hey, even if somebody goes for the crotch grab, you can't get that mad. You just wait till the next play and then try to get him back. Because if you try to retaliate right there when the ref is standing there, it's not going to end up well for you.
They're going to get you. Hey, great to talk to you, Joe. Thanks for joining us and have fun in the offseason.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Dan.
That's Joe Thomas, the NFL Network analyst and a future Hall of Fame offensive lineman. He was a Pro Bowl offensive tackle 10 years with the Cleveland Browns.